Good afternoon. Welcome. You are tuned into the Labor Forum here at WRFG 89.3 FM. It has been a super busy weekend. All of us here at the Labor Forum team were involved in both the rally in support of refugees and immigrants on Saturday and, of course, the WRFG fundraiser that was yesterday. So we'll be talking about some of those things a little bit later. The opinions that are expressed on this program may not necessarily be those of the board of directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Diane.
And Paul's leaving to go out of the country tomorrow. How cool is that? We wish we could go with them. They probably don't want us to go. All right. I'm in a kind of a giddy mood today, I have to tell you all. We worked hard over the weekend on two really important events, and so we're looking forward to doing this program. We have two guests that we think you will both find quite interesting and informative. So I'm going to start with labor headlines for today, Monday, December 14th. There was much public acclaim in the big business media about the agreement reached in Paris this past weekend to reduce the use of carbon-based fuels and to try to prevent any more global warming. For the first time, more than 190 countries adopted an accord that asserts the dangers of global warming and outlines a series of measures to be taken. The stated long-term goal is to limit the rise in the Earth's temperature from what was the pre-industrial norm to a maximum of 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the words of the agreement, to, quote, pursue efforts, close quote, to hold that number to 2.7 degrees. What needs to be realized when reading about the Paris negotiations and all the hype about it is that temperatures have already risen by 1.8 degrees since the dawn of the industrial age. That means there's less than a degree to go before the 2.7 degrees rise. And this many-paged agreement does not go into effect until 2020 to allow countries to develop their plans to cut emissions. Also, the voluntary nature of the various provisions of the agreement reflect the continued resistance of the major capitalist countries to curb their methods of extracting profit from plundered resources and exploiting labor in their own nations and in the former colonized world. In a statement issued by the International Trade Union Confederation, the lack of commitment by governments in the operational sections of the agreement to respect human rights and provide just transition for workers during the needed changes to clean and sustainable energy use were particularly criticized. As the organization points out, some 20 million people, farmers, workers, herders, fisher people, have already had their lives and livelihoods destroyed by extreme weather events and season changes caused by industrial enterprises. It credits unions and civil society for moving governments thus far and makes clear that any progress on this crucial issue will only come from the organized efforts of the people. For national news, the Labor Forum first reported on the UAW Local 833 strike against the Kohler Company in Sheboygan, Wisconsin on November 16th, the day after the strike began. And we followed the next Monday with an interview with David Boucher, the union's financial secretary and treasurer. The more than 2,000 workers are fighting in large part to end the divisive and poverty wages known as two-tier, where longtime workers are paid living wages and receive benefits, and new hires either remain permanently stuck in pay scales of $10 to $13 an hour and no benefits, or work years before a few are allowed into the first tier. Around-the-clock picket lines have remained strong over the last 4 weeks, with solidarity delegations coming from throughout Wisconsin and the Midwest to add numbers to the effort. This is a recognition of how important the fight against two-tier slavery is to workers. Negotiations with the multi-billion-dollar family-owned company resumed on December 5th after almost 3 weeks of strike activity in front of the plant entrance. The workers had rejected by a 94% vote the so-called last and best offer that left two-tier intact offered slight raises per hour over 3 years, but then substantially raised healthcare costs. The company claimed a $1,200 signing bonus would cover the insurance increase, which meant no raise at all. There are a number of ways Labor Forum listeners can support these workers. There is a petition online at UAW 833's website directed to Kohler management, plus an address to send financial contributions to enable the strikers to provide for their families while they keep up the fight for all of us. And lastly, a victory to share in Atlanta. Last Monday, the Atlanta City Council voted 13-0 to set up a diversion program for nonviolent offenders facing arrest by police. It allows police and judges to offer small-time drug users or mentally ill people involved in nuisance crimes to choose to participate in the program rather than being jailed. Caseworkers who will address the needs of the person will be assigned to find them effective help. Dean Steed of the Solutions Not Punishment Coalition, or SNAPCO, the community group that worked tirelessly to win passage of the diversion program, made it clear at City Hall that, quote, jail does not transform addiction. Jail does not transform mental illness. And, quote, locking someone up does not get them a job, close quote. Congratulations to SNAPCO and all those who achieved this change in Atlanta policy, one that will have important consequences for poor and working people here. And that concludes our labor headlines. We're going to move right away to a really important piece that Paul has prepared about a person. You know, lots of times we talk about people on the Labor Forum and people may say, what have they got to do with labor? And our viewpoint, of course, is that all those who are struggling for justice, for the rights of poor and working people, oppressed people, are part of our labor movement. So Paul has somebody that I hope you all will learn about, and maybe some of you have heard about.
Thanks, Diane. Last week on December 8th, Native American poet, philosopher, activist, and warrior John Trudell passed on at 69 after a long fight with cancer. Among his many contributions, he helped spark a spoken word movement that is a continuation of Native American oral traditions. John Trudell was born in Omaha, Nebraska on February 15, 1946, the son of a Santee Dakota father and a mother of Mexican Indian heritage. He grew up in small towns near the Santee Sioux Reservation in northern Nebraska and was educated in local schools and in Santee Dakota culture. In 1963, when he was 17 years old, he dropped out of high school and joined the U.S. Navy. He served during the early years of the Vietnam War and stayed in the Navy until 1967. Afterward, he attended a 2-year community college in San Bernardino, California, studying radio and broadcasting. In 1969, he became the spokesperson for the United Indians of All Tribes occupation of Alcatraz Island. This was a mostly Native American student member group that had developed in San Francisco. He used his background in broadcasting and ran a radio station from the island through a cooperative arrangement with students at the University of California, Berkeley. The station broadcast at night over the Berkeley FM station, and the show was called Radio Free Alcatraz. He discussed the cause of the occupation and Native American issues and played traditional Native American music. He was part of the nationally organized cross-country caravan Trail of Broken Treaties in 1972, which ended with the occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs building in Washington, D.C., and the issuance of the 20 Points Manifesto. From 1973 to 1979, he served as chairman of the American Indian Movement, which was formed in July 1968 to address Native American sovereignty rights, treaty issues, spirituality, and leadership, while simultaneously addressing incidents of police harassment and racism against Native Americans, particularly in urban areas. A critical turning point in John Trudell's life came in February 1979 after he burned a U.S. flag on the steps of the FBI building in Washington, D.C. in protest of the government's treatment of Native Americans and the Sioux Nation. Within 24 hours, his pregnant wife, 3 children, and mother-in-law were killed in a suspicious fire at the home of his parents-in-law on the Shoshone-Paiute tribe's Duck Valley Indian Reservation in Nevada. His wife, Tina, was an activist in her own right who had been working for tribal water rights. A Bureau of Indian Affairs police investigation claimed the fire was accidental. Trudell believed it was arson and the fire was meant to silence him and his partner. About 6 months after the deaths of his family, John Trudell started writing poetry. He described his work, saying, "They're called poems, but in reality they're lines given to me to hang on to." He believed in the spoken word, that it had power. Trudell turned to writing, music, and film to express his vision and activism. Trudell also went on to become a noted environmental activist and was an outspoken advocate for the rights of other species. He quickly joined in the forest protection efforts of the 1980s and the effort to curtail fossil fuel use and carbon pollution. Joy Harjo, a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation who lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, had this to say about John's passing. "In every season are given messengers. They rise up to carry a voice for a nation, a people, a time. They emerge through holes from broken history, from bloody grounds, stirred from the collective dream field by a need to rectify the difference between earthly injustice and holy vision." She continues, "Around the common need to affirm our mutual presence as caretakers of our lands, our families, our existence as distinct nations, in an age of the rise of multinational corporate overlords and the continued loss and theft of our children to the greed carnival, John stood up with his generation of changemakers, questioners of evil, and warriors for justice." We'll end with John Trudell's own words. "We must not become confused and deceived by their illusions. There is no such thing as military power. There is only military terrorism. There is no such thing as economic power. There is only economic exploitation. That is all that it is. They try to program our minds and fool us with these illusions so that we will believe that they hold the power in their hands, but they do not. All they know is how to act in a repressive, brutal way. We are a natural part of the earth. We are an extension of the earth. We are not separate from it. We are part of it. The earth is our mother. The earth is a spirit, and we are an extension of that spirit. We are spirit. We are power."
Wow. I had the pleasure of meeting John Trudell many, many, many years ago. I share with you this wonderful tribute you gave to him, and I hope that this really resonated with our listeners. We're going to take a moment for a brief message right now, and then we're going to come back with our guest. And this is a great person that I just met this past weekend. It's Pastor George from the Memorial Drive Presbyterian Church. So stay tuned. Back to the Labor Forum. We are here in Atlanta, and we are broadcasting at 89.3 FM. And so I want to introduce our guest, who's seated next to Paul and me, or in between Paul and me. We've got him squeezed in like a sandwich. This is Pastor George. His last name is Tatro, George Tatro. And he is are you the senior pastor?
I am the only pastor.
You are the only pastor. Makes you senior, junior, and everything. Pastor at Memorial Drive Presbyterian Church. This was the site this past Saturday of a rally that the Georgia Peace and Justice Coalition initiated in concert, actually without the collaboration of many of the refugee activists, members of the community who really made it possible. And it was to counter all of the anti-immigrant, anti-refugee, and Islamophobic, we could go on and on, racist rhetoric that fills the airwaves. But we want to first give Pastor George an opportunity to tell us a little bit about himself and this church that seems to be such a beacon of hope in this neighborhood.
Well, thank you. I've been over there at Memorial Drive for 5 years now. And it was a church that had kind of gotten disconnected from its community over the years. The community has changed so much. And so how do we reach people that seem so strange to us and seem very different from us? And my experience working in Chamblee with immigrants gave me a lot of background to work with people from multiple cultures. And so they called me 5 years ago, and I've been working ever since, and it's just, it's amazing the things that are happening in Clarkston. It's to counter the narrative that we hear. We hear this narrative of death, that we're all supposed to be afraid, and yet when you meet people and you live in community, you see vibrancy and life and flourishing, and so that's kind of the message we're trying to spread.
So I have to admit, I've driven down Memorial Drive, a million times. And I guess I never really noticed this huge church building on that corner. And when I first came there, I saw there was a daycare center, there was children playing, there were all kinds of people going in and out. What is it that the church all offers the community?
Oh, we do have a early childhood learning. We have 2 Georgia pre-K classes, and we have a lot of the people from the community, the children in our pre-K and pre-pre-K classes. We have a group of women who are Islamic who come over and sew at our church. We have space for sewing. We do a lot of partnerships with IRC, which is the International Rescue Committee. We do ESL, citizenship training. We host an annual Thanksgiving Day feast for over 200 families, 20 different languages spoken, and lots of turkey eaten.
So we're going to talk now a little bit about, I guess, the rally that took place, but moreover, how it is that you are seeing this, flood of real fear-mongering and the impact it's having on people who live very close to that church building and in all those surrounding neighborhoods. Is it your sense that people are organizing, or that they're fearful, or just what do you feel is happening as a result of what keeps getting blared out by politicians like Trump and then of course Governor Deal? Yeah,
I was very saddened. I'm saddened at the rhetoric that's going on. I'm saddened at the narrative that we're hearing, and in some ways the refugee community is a political football that's easy to toss around, but these are people's lives. They're part of our community, and so what we're trying to do is say, that is not the narrative that needs to be told. It's the story of the Somali refugees coming together and working to try to get their community cleaned up. And if you read the accounts in the news, you think that you're in Somalia and they're driving around in pickup trucks with guns in the back. These are the most gentle and kind, gracious people, and they're part of our community. And the hope, what I'm hoping is to build a community that is flourishing, where people can grow and just flourish in the community. And that's a real hard task. I was saddened to hear that some of the women who are in the sewing club were fearful because of all this rhetoric that's going on. And it's also, unless you live with people, unless you journey with them, you can't know them. And it's easy to demonize them, and we are better than that as a nation and as a city.
Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you say a little more about your vision in terms of your experience in Chamblee and now in Clarkston about DeKalb County and what this community could be?
There's a prophet that said, seek the peace of your community, seek the shalom of your community, because in its shalom you will find your shalom. And so I think when we talk about well-being, healthiness, health, vibrancy, flourishing, those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see happen. You have a similar kind of push against the undocumented immigrants, but yet when we needed them to come in the 80s to do the work for the Olympics, they were here, and we enjoyed that free labor. And people could get driver's licenses, and people could get insurance on the cars, but as soon as we didn't have that need anymore, we started cutting off all of those privileges and rights. And so, I hear a lot of talk, and they want to say that this one community that's facing its struggles is the reason why we should not accept any more refugees. And I find it ironic that fellow Christians at this time forget the part of the story where Jesus was a refugee in the land of Egypt. There's a little bit of irony in that. And so, are we going to be hospitable? Are we going to be welcoming the stranger in our midst? And I think that's one of our highest callings as a society.
And I'd have to say, we talk on this program a lot about the results of U.S. wars and intervention. And so while not every single refugee that exists is because some are also as a result of climate change and drought and famines, etc., so many are running from U.S. bombs and U.S. drones and ongoing U.S. intervention in their economic and their political systems. So the idea that somehow terrorism is those people and terrorism isn't what is caused by rampant exploitation of labor, militarism, is something that people really need to grapple with.
Well, and I think that's the real challenge we all have, and that's why I appreciate this station as much as I do, because what we do is we have an opportunity to have real conversations, and we realize the complexity of life. Life is not black or white. It's a mix of all things. Life problems are not yes or no. They're complex issues. There's so many dynamics that go into the situation that we're facing now. The people that are making the headlines and getting all the attention are from Syria. They're fleeing the very people that we're afraid of, and yet we're accusing them of being the people we're afraid of. And there's some kind of insanity in that.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll just say a few words about this rally that took place on the front lawn of your church, and we wanted to thank you again publicly for giving us that space, because without it, we couldn't have done our Wall of Solidarity on Memorial Drive.
Awesome.
And if any of you were people who drove by, honked, waved, took a picture, it was a really impressive kind of show of a very multinational, multi-generational, multi-faith coming together of people who really were wanting to make a public stand against this kind of very vicious racism and pro-war rhetoric and fear-mongering and all the words we could think of to describe what is going on every day. I just want to make one more comment and ask you one more thing about Governor Deal and his position that the state agencies shouldn't even help Syrian refugees to get federally funded food stamps.
Well, that's illegal, isn't it? I think that's illegal. I don't think you should do that. That's against the law.
I know. I have to say, as somebody who remembers very well George Wallace standing in the doorway of the University of Alabama saying that black students were going to be in, I just really feel like Governor Deal is standing in the doorway, and he will go down in history with the same kind of disdain and rejection that George Wallace did.
I invited Governor Deal to be a part of our Thanksgiving celebration with the refugees so that he could meet them and get to know them and share in the tea ceremony with some people and hear their stories and just to share what coming to America means. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it that day.
Well, I have a feeling that there'll be some folks that come visit him on this issue. I do want to let everybody know that because the entire WRFG Labor Forum team was at this rally this past Saturday, that we actually have a video that's on the Labor Forum YouTube channel where you can see these incredible speakers coming from so many countries and the multitude of signs proclaiming the opposition to this anti-refugee, anti-immigrant rhetoric. Pastor George, thanks so much for being here with us.
It was my pleasure anytime, and anytime you want to do something that's going to build up the community, you're welcome.
Thanks again. And Pastor George says he is a listener of WRFG, and we like that.
That's right. Maybe you'll get some money out of me before I leave.
We like that even better. All right, our next guest is on the line.
Thank you so much.
And we want to go ahead and have him brought on as soon as we can, but we have one more message. We do. And we're going to shake hands with Pastor George as he leaves while you listen to this message. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Appreciate it.